Hey, welcome back to Data Science at Home podcast. I'm Francesco, and I will be your host for the next 20 minutes or so. Data Science at Home is the show where we talk about technology, trends, and recently the absolute chaos that happens when companies think that they are smarter than everyone else. In this episode, I would like to speak about a post that I actually wrote a while ago on my personal newsletter, which is defragzone.substack.com. Of course, I will report the link in the show notes of this episode at the official website, datascienceathome.com. And today, I want to dive into a topic that indeed it has been making me laugh, cry, and, and face palm all at the same time, which is this very recent obsession from the tech industry with replacing programmers with artificial intelligence. If some have, had this idea and they were entertaining this idea, some others were making speculations. Some others have taken action and sent home some developers, some programmers from their development teams. But of course, before we get into it, let me just say that if you are a programmer listening to this show, don't worry. You're not a relic, not yet, and very likely not for many decades from now. You're just a wizard, and wizards are always in demand, especially when they are the folks who actually build artificial intelligence. So there is some misunderstanding of what these new tools can actually do, the quality of the things they do. And, there are very bad speculations that will have, in my humble opinion, dramatic consequences. So I would like to, take that post from my newsletter and just comment it here because maybe, there is a different audience that will listen to this show. But in any case, what I did, I think a bit less than a month ago, was as I usually do, publishing what I write on my newsletter. I publish it on Hackers News, and what happened in the time frame of like 5-6 hours, especially when the time zone moved to United States. It literally went viral. I got something like more than 800, I don't know as they are called, points or score. The Hackers News mana. What is that? Like, it's like the post was on the front page for like several hours, almost the whole day, and that was incredible. Completely unexpected, of course. I was very happy that the post had so much visibility. When I analyzed the views on the newsletter, I got something like 45,000 views, which is impressive. So now I don't want to brag about these numbers. I don't care. What I want to really be confident of is that what I wrote, it resonated with a lot of people out there, which is always a good thing. We have to say that the population of Hackers News, as well as the population of this show, are probably nerds, developers, programmers. I hope there are more, decision makers, how they call them, because these are the folks who are actually taking the decisions, and in my opinion, they're doing a big mistake. So, you heard me. Companies are literally laying off programmers, not all of them, thank God, but many of them are laying off people because they think that artificial intelligence can do it all. And, I made a comparison with, I made an analogy with, you don't need a fire department because we installed smoke detectors. You can read that from the post, just to mention that, sure, smoke detectors are great, but when the house is on fire, you're going to want someone who actually knows how to put it out. And of course, artificial intelligence doesn't own a fire extinguisher. That's the analogy that I tried to make. Now, of course, some people grasped it, some other didn't. Some others were criticizing my my analogy, but I hope it's clear that it was a comparison with how things can really go wrong when it comes to software development. And we have been there like for the last 20 years personally, and people older than me, even longer than that. So we are very familiar with the dynamics of software development, and that's why people like myself can spot these trends and can criticize certain statements from a distance. Now, I want to mention that there are, there are three ways, in my opinion, that this is going to blow up in text phase. All right. So let me break it down for you. The three reasons why this whole AI will replace programmers thing is going to backfire harder than people really expect for three essential reasons. The first is that the new generation of programmers will be less prepared. Okay, so once upon a time, programmers learned their craft by literally wrestling with real problems, debugging code, optimizing performance, dealing with weird hardware bugs that made no sense. We still do that, all right? It was really like boot camp, just with more caffeine and fewer push-ups for those who have been into military. But now, companies now aren't investing in junior developers, at least not as much as they should. And and the reason for this, and again, my personal speculation is that they are convinced that you don't need to train people when you can just have AI spit out boilerplate code, right? Which is a very bad reason not to train people. Now, you might be telling me, I don't train people because I don't have enough cash. I don't have enough cash flow to justify that I need, to have a bunch of guys or girls idle and waiting that these folks actually learn something and hope that they do and that they stay and they start producing. And I cannot do this because I don't have cash flow. That would be acceptable. But, justifying the lack of training because of, who cares, we have AI now, it's something that, it doesn't work with me. I don't really accept that. And I think it's bad. That's why I might not accept who am I, but it's bad. So imagine the robot that comes to you and says, here's your code. Good luck figuring out why it doesn't work. Because exactly what happens is this, like you go on ChatGPT or DeepSeek or whatever is your AI provider, and you write a prompt, you get some code that probably hasn't been tested, very likely hasn't been tested. It's like, vomiting code that, these models have been cherry picking from their massive training set encoded in tokens, and bingo, you cannot expect that code works exactly in your particular scenario, which is a very custom thing, one of the most custom things that you can think of in software development endeavors. So this has a consequence, and that was the biggest claim in the post. Like, this attitude, this way of thinking will have consequences. And one of those consequences will be that the next generation of programmers is going to grow up expecting that artificial intelligence does the heavy lifting, right? So they won't know how to debug, these cryptic race conditions or build resilient systems, probably because, one, they don't know what a race condition is, or they don't know what it means to have a resilient system, because they have never been exposed to these concepts in the first place. So it's the equivalent, and I think I made that example again in the post. It's like teaching kids to drive, but only telling them that cars are Teslas with autopilot, right? Right? It's the equivalent, because when you don't expose a driver to the nitty gritty of the the mechanics and the how pedals work and things like that, we have seen this already to a smaller scale. People who drive automated cars and those who actually come from the old school manual driving, right? The second ones can drive the first ones, but not the other way around. It's quite weird, and I've seen it with some of my American colleagues and friends. When I drive, I was driving my car in Europe, which is mainly, now probably we are seeing more automated cars, but a few years ago, I still have a manual car. It's quite fun, but when they tried to drive that, it's like what? It doesn't. I don't understand. Why should I move this gear things and how should I play with the paddle and do this at the same time while I'm watching the street? They are confused, and it's not because they're stupid. It's because they've never been exposed to that quote unquote complexity, uh, which of course you can grasp instantly, but or well, it takes a while. But if you've never been exposed, it's gonna be a problem. For example, a car crash. Now, this is exactly the analogy that I wanted to cover in the post. Um, the second reason is that companies who fire programmers will regret it sooner than later. So, to explain this, picture this: a big fintech company fires half of its dev team because AI can write code. Now, 6 months later, the AI generated software is leaking private financial data. Things happen on the protocols that change, etc., etc. Now, what happens as a consequence is that the regulators are breathing down the neck of the developers and the managers. Customers are fleeing, and the AI is, just sitting there generating more broken code like a toddler smashing Lego bricks together and calling it a house, right? That's another example that I make in the post. It was pretty fun until it wasn't. So what they do as a consequence, well, the companies, I mean, they try to rehire the programmers they laid off a while ago. But guess what? Those programmers have moved on. Now they are consulting for obscene rates, daily rates, or working on their own projects. And now the company is stuck with this AI generated spaghetti code and no one to fix it, right? The third reason is about the serious programmers, those who know what they're doing, right? So the people, the old school programmers, I call them old school because old school means um, that you were exposed to these, nasty bugs that were coming from, you know, software and hardware, probably more hardware than software. But anyway, serious programmers will be even more rare and, of course, more expensive because guess what? Rare things or rare people cost a lot. So let's talk about the real winners in all this. Of course, the programmers who saw the chaos coming and opted out of corporate tech. So these are the people, in my opinion, who went deep into systems programming, AI interpretability, high performance computing. They're the ones who actually understand the technology at a level that no AI can replicate. Because guess what? These are the people who are building that AI. So they're about to become very expensive. Companies will soon realize that that AI cannot, of course, replace experienced engineers, but by then there will be fewer of them, right? And guess what happens? Ka-ching! You want to harden back? Ka-ching! You better have deep pockets and a lot of luck. Sometimes it's not even about money, it's about the number of these people that are available. It's not, sometimes there are companies that, of course, can afford even very expensive programmers. The problem is that they don't find enough of these people. That's the biggest problem. So these people are not around. So even if you have a lot of cash, that will not fix your problem. So these programmers, in the best case scenario, will charge rates that make executives cry. And even if you do manage to hire them, believe me, they won't stick around to play corporate politics. They have been laid off, or some of them have been laid off a while ago, a while before. So they'll fix your broken systems, invoice you an eye-watering amount, and walk away. That's what's gonna happen. That's what I think is gonna happen. Now, I concluded the post with a provocative statement, which is, of course, technology is shooting itself in the foot. So here's the bottom line. The tech industry, in my opinion, is making a massive mistake. First of all, by believing that AI can replace programmers, it's killing the very ecosystem that keeps innovation alive. Now, we are about to enter a world where junior programmers are undertrained and over reliant on AI, Believe me, this is already happening. I'm seeing already this with the some of the folks I speak with. The second thing that we're gonna see is that companies that fired engineers are scrambling to fix the mass AI generated code leaves behind, right? And the third is that the best programmers are so rare and so expensive, of course, as a consequence, that only the wealthiest firms can afford them. And this, in turn, will have another consequence, which will be the polarization between, the deep pocket companies and the normal companies. You know, those who can afford rock star developers or developers who know what they're doing will be the only one who can actually enter that space and, of course, pay these people. All the other companies who are kind of in that limbo, well, they will stay behind because they cannot afford the now so much more expensive developers that are available. And so that's, these are the problems that I think are going to happen, unfortunately, until, of course, we stop doing what we're doing. And I don't put myself into this game because we have always been advocate of, you know, don't follow the hype, don't follow the AI hype. It's just hype. These things cannot replace people anytime soon, especially this category of people. So, well, that's it for today. Thanks for tuning into Data Science at Home podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with your friends, especially if you are a programmer. And if you are a tech executive listening to this, maybe think twice before firing your engineers. Until next time, and of course, keep coding, keep laughing, and remember, AI might be smart for sure, but it's not that smart.